The argument that I want to put forth for the review of the software design document is that the document is much like a skeleton. As a reader, you can see that the document has a good direction. It's moving towards the right direction, and it covers all of the aspects, most of the aspects required for the software design document, but it just needs to be fleshed out. There needs to be more detail in the figures and in the text to better reflect the arguments and to give the reader the confidence that critical thinking has been involved in the process of design. So, moving on to organization and completeness. The reader can see that the diagrams cover much of the architecture. The problem is that there's not enough text outlining the figures and explaining what is actually happening in those figures. The design decisions do cover, have good coverage of the project, but the decisions are not stated as such, rather they're stated as a matter of fact. More detail could be incorporated into why this decision was made over another. So the software architecture is easily understood from the figures and from the description of the subsystems, but again, more detail needs to be added into the holistic viewpoint of the system from the start to the end, what is actually happening. I think it's best to not leave this to the reader's interpretation. It needs to be explicit. The requirements of the software design document do cover those requirements specified in the software requirements specification. So the relationship of architecture to requirements are clearly addressed in the design of the components and in the human interface design. And the diagrams do give the reader confidence that thought has been involved in the development of these systems. But the discussion of the architecture's ability to achieve non-functional requirements is completely missing. So there needs to be some detail about how is the system easy to use? Is it maintainable? Is it robust? These are the questions that I think can be addressed in the SDD. Just more elaboration needs to be added. I think the requirements are covered, but the architecture writing is very one-dimensional again. It doesn't consider other viewpoints or alternatives to how it can achieve those requirements. The resources specified in the SDD are lacking. It does state to use JUnit, but it doesn't specify why, and it doesn't give a breakdown of the number of staff hours required per module. The models are good. I just think that the figures need either more detail, more of them, or they just need more explanation. So, for instance, in the simple process model diagram, it doesn't have inputs and outputs are not even discussed in text. So either you need to add inputs and outputs to the model, or you need to talk about it in the text, but preferably both. We don't have a logical data model per se. We have sort of an amalgamation of a logical data model, a state diagram, and an action flow diagram. I think this definitely needs to be split. It's best to have 3 different models. Hardware is not specified at all, neither has a database been referenced. There needs to be more communication in like explaining the communication between the modules in the figures. And we also need to add a physical data model. One of the good things about the software design document is how the functional design entities are used as a basis for the development of the core modules of the program. So as you can see in the simple process flow diagram, a maintenance engineer who needs to fix some component can easily see which user requirements relate to which module of the software architecture. And I think that's good. The baselines are managed well in our bi-weekly meetings where we address changes to the system architecture as a team, but I think we need to better specify how we're going to control baselines. So to conclude, I think that the document, it's definitely moving in the right direction. It just needs more work in the detail. And I think that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, because it's easy to remember why you did something currently than why you did something, a few weeks ago.